to attend. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Stephen Cherney. I'm the chair of the Hunter Mill Land Use Committee. And since we're being recorded for the first time in this, the recording will be posted on Supervisor Alcorn's website. I'll just give a little background of this committee before we launch into things. So anyway, this is a Citizens Advisory Committee. We're going on our 25th year now. The members are appointed by the supervisor. And what our charge is to review land use applications that will ultimately go to the Planning Commission, and most of them, that more than 90% of them, will go on to the Board of Supervisors. We merely make a recommendation. We're all volunteers. We represent different parts of the of Hunter Mill District. So we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves and state what part of the district wherein we reside. We also have with us John Carter, who is the Hunter Mill Planning Commissioner. He usually joins us for these meetings. And I'm not sure if we have a quorum or not. It doesn't matter because we only have one presentation today, and it's not an application for some sort of approval or by this this advisory committee. So we're going to hear tonight from members of the Fairfax County planning staff, and they will give us a briefing on basically what the status is regarding the implementation of the Tysons plan, which has been in place for quite some time now. Supervisor Alcorn actually served on the task force that developed the plan. So we'll go ahead and just introduce ourselves. Again, I'm Stephen Cherney. I reside in Reston. Jay, do you want to go next?
I'm Jay Monroe. I also reside in Reston.
Ross?
Hi, I'm Ross Shearer. I live in Vienna, the Northeast Quadrant, and I want to thank Mark for arranging this presentation.
Hey, Paul? Oh, Paul, you're muted.
There we go. Paul O'Mara. I live in Vienna, but not the town. Ideally, if I want to scare people, I say I live at Tysons.
Okay, thanks. Joe Kozarek? Joe? Joe, you're muted.
All right, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Joe, you reside in Reston, correct?
Reston Town Center, yes.
Yes. Okay, and Anne Marie?
Good evening, this is Anne Marie McKinnon. I'm in Vienna. I am getting this meeting remotely, so I apologize if for the first, say, 20 minutes, I fade in and out, but I should be on in a stationary fashion in about 20 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Anne Marie. And let me see here. And then Chris Caperton, I assume, is actually with county staff.
Hi, folks. Yeah, Chris Caperton. I'm the Deputy Director in the Department of Planning and Development. Glad that staff can be with you tonight and make the presentation. Good to see you, John. And I'm going to go off camera because I'm monitoring the board's data public hearing, which is going on as we speak. And they're deep into their public testimony. But great to be with you guys and gals tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And do you want to go ahead and introduce your colleagues? Or they can introduce themselves, actually.
Let me introduce Susie Batista, who's the section director for the Urban Center section. And she's been working in all things Tysons and Reston for 4 or 5+ years now, a lot of experience in putting the Tysons tracker together. And with her is Beth Elliott, who's a planner in our urban center section as well. And I'll let Susie do further introductions and what they're going to do tonight. So thanks, Stephen.
Okay, thank you. And let's go ahead and get started then.
So thank you, everyone. We're really happy to be here tonight. We're going to be presenting data that's included within the Tysons tracker. The Tysons tracker it was born out of the annual report, which is born out of the board's follow-on motion when the plan for Tysons was adopted in 2010. And the board charged staff with doing annual monitoring as to how the plan is doing. And so tonight we're going to touch on pretty high level topic areas. We're not going to, we don't have the time to kind of dive into a lot of the details, but as Beth will tell you, there's a ton of and a wealth of information within the tracker, and we welcome you to dive into that. And we're certainly available to answer any questions you may have. We do update it annually in the fall timeframe, so there will be new information published around the September-October timeframe. So with that, I'll turn it over to Beth.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the presentation. And let me know if there's any issues with that.
Good so far.
Great. So my name is Beth Elliott. As people have mentioned before, I'm a planner with the Urban Center section in the Department of Planning and Development. I just want to thank you guys all for the opportunity to present tonight on the development in Tysons. As mentioned by Susie, we're going to briefly cover some of the implementation progress for the Tysons Comprehensive Plan, focusing primarily on changes in land use. And as noted, because updates are published in the fall, this presentation represents updates through June 1st of 2023. I understand that's a little over a year old, and we will be publishing updated materials soon, or this fall. We're in the process of getting all that together currently. So kind of taking a step back, looking at this from a high level, as you're likely aware, Tysons was replanned and the plan was adopted in 2010, creating the county's urban center. The goal is that development is planned around the 4 new Metro Rail stations, which began operation in July of 2014, connecting Dulles to DC in the region's Metro Rail system. Phase 2 opened in late of 2022, and the goal is to have transit-oriented development focused around those 4 areas, primarily within half a mile of Metro, having 100,000 residents and 200,000 jobs in Tysons by 2050, with a goal of 4 jobs per household as an ideal ratio. As noted, most of the redevelopment is planned within half mile of Metro, with a major emphasis on mixed use, employment center, sustainability, urban design, and the visual environment. As noted by Susie earlier, plan implementation monitoring is one of the 20 board follow-on motions related to implementation initiatives and board directives, including staffing, process, workforce and affordable housing, parks, and transportation initiatives, all of which are included as topical areas within the Tysons tracker. And we also have a web page specifically focusing on each of the 20 follow-on motions, if you're curious about a particular one. Looking at Tysons overall, this is one way to kind of quickly understand the scale of development so far. As of June 2023, 46 major rezonings have been approved. And if you locate the 4 black boxes for Metro stations, you can see that most of the rezonings are within close proximity to the stations, which is the concept behind transit-oriented development, or TOD. And so in terms of the amount of land area under a development application, shown in blue on this map, that is approximately 633 acres. The Tysons urban area polygon, for reference, is 2,140 acres. So that means we're just under 30% of Tysons having an approved development application. At the time of the 2023 publication, there were 5 cases under review. Since June, 2 of them have been approved, along with 5 amendment applications, and we'll touch more on some of those later in the presentation. For development highlights from plan adoption in 2010 through June of 2023, we've seen 11.7 million square feet of development within 36 new buildings be delivered, which increases the overall development in Tysons by about 27%. For context, the existing development level as of January 1st, 2011, is about 47 million square feet. The proffered public park acreage has increased by 107 acres, and 35.6 of those acres have been delivered as of June 2023. A total of 74.5 million square feet of development has been entitled across 219 buildings. 5,362 new housing units have been constructed, which is a 53% increase across Tysons. And we've had commitments for 15 new public facilities, or major public facilities. Looking at this graph on the left, you can see that there's approximately a total of approximately 60 million square feet of development that existed on the ground as of June 2023. Based on the use mix, you can see it's still predominantly office, followed by residential, then retail and hotel uses. Just a quick caveat, we use square feet and GFA, or gross floor area, interchangeably. So, but in the graph on the right, you can see an increase of that 25 or 27% growth between 2011 and 2023. And that while each of the categories individually are growing, the percentage of office is decreasing while the percentage of residential is increasing, which is keeping with the plan goals and trying to get us closer to the goal of creating a jobs to housing balance. In addition, we're seeing the redevelopment of obsolete office buildings with mixed-use development as anticipated by the plan. We have seen significant new office come online since plan adoption. For instance, in 2020 or 2012, there's 27.8 million square feet of office. And in 2023, we had 30.7 million square feet. So almost 3 million new office space coming online, in addition to what's being replaced. And then if focusing more on the residential growth and how we're getting closer to the intended plan mix of uses, you can see here between 2010 and 2023, we've almost doubled the residential population and close or slightly less close to doubled for the residential units, but we are, and then this total line represents all approved development. And as you can see, with the goal of 6 jobs per household. We're moving closer to that by getting to the, or sorry, 4 jobs per household. We're moving closer to that by having 6.8 jobs per household as of 2023. And then this graph shows the projected development levels in blue compared to the existing development levels shown in red, and the projects that are under construction or anticipated to begin construction by 2025, which is shown in the red dashed line. And here you can see that development levels estimated for the near term track plan projections, which are broken down into annual intervals, but do not account for market fluctuations and other impacts such as metro operations, financing, interest rates, construction costs, etc. And so the gap between the 2 lines shows the capacity for new development under planned projections, and market dynamics really influence the reality of the built environment and timing as it relates to the 2050 long-range planning estimates and goals. And we do also want to note here that this is only tracking existing development constructed and projects anticipated to begin construction in the next 2 years, not earlier pipeline data such as approved rezonings or final development plans. So a development that has, say, FDP approval, but not a site plan yet, is not accounted for in this projection. This is only looking at existing construction, things that have been constructed, and projections for construction based on approved site plans as compared to the plan. And so overall, the growth based on the plan is about 12 million square feet below the projected capacity out of a total of over 60 million square feet, which is about 15.5% below projections, a slight increase over last year's 15% below. And overall growth has stabilized over the past 3 years, most likely due to the pandemic, construction costs, and developer financing / interest rates. But it's important to note that this graph represents a little over a quarter of the plan's long-term projections, and we're about 14 years into a 40-year plan. To break down some of the development totals shown for within this past reporting cycle, we're going to go a little further in depth on some of the recent construction progress. So within the last reporting cycle, 4 buildings were delivered, totaling 2 million square feet. In addition, a private interim baseball / softball diamond was delivered at Capital One East. Those 4 buildings are 3 residential buildings, Brentford at the Mile, the Monarch, and the Ryland. Both Brentford and the Monarch include some ground floor square retail activation, and 1 office building with retail at Capital One. As of June 2023, there was 1.1 million square feet under construction. I'll go into this in the next slide a little bit more. Within this time, or within that reporting cycle, there were approval of 2 major zoning projects, Somos and the Flats at Tysons. 2 new permanent park spaces were delivered at the Highland District, and construction and delivery occurred of the pedestrian and bicycle bridge over I-495 at Tysons Corner Center. So, as noted, the 2 buildings that were under construction as of June 23 was Arbor Row's Mather, which is primarily continuing care facility, so residential in nature. It includes retail, some medical care uses, and a public facility. And then Scott's Run South, Block C, otherwise known as the Hemming, which is primarily residential with retail as well. And both of those have been delivered since June of 2023. So many of the transportation projects identified in the Tysons Metro Rail Station Access Management Study, otherwise known as TIMSAMS, to support the development of the Silver Line have been completed already, and the last two are almost underway. One is under construction as of June 2023. It has since been completed, and the focus of these projects is really on pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, the goal being to connect the neighborhoods around Tysons to the Metro Rail stations. One significant project that was completed within the past reporting cycle, as noted earlier, is the pedestrian and bicyclist bridge over I-495, and approximately a half-mile shared use path connecting to Old Meadow Road, which was completed in October of 22. The two remaining projects as of June 2023 are the Route 7 corridor improvements, Phase 2, which includes shared use paths to provide consistent bicycle and pedestrian facilities along Route 7 between Reston Avenue and Jarrett Valley Drive, which is almost 7-mile stretch, and the addition of more travel lanes and substantial intersection improvements along the corridor. Second one being Ash Grove Trail, Phase 2, which is to construct a 10-foot wide trail from Ash Grove Plantation Trail to the Westwood Center Drive. And as of June 23, that was currently on hold. Since June of 23, Route 7 improvements have been completed. Next, we want to focus a little bit on the environment. And so we've had a few projects be completed throughout Tysons as of June 23. Scott's Run at McLean Station, improvements related to Arbor Row at Ken Lawrence Park, and Old Courthouse Spring Branch Phase 1. Upcoming projects include Old Courthouse Spring Branch at Ascro, which is related to the new trail, and additional work at Scott's Run. And focusing on some of the upcoming ones, for Old Courthouse Spring Branch, the project is going to restore about 2,000 linear feet of natural stream channel, replace the culvert under Ash Grove Lane, and repair the trail because the stream channel exhibits severely eroded and over-widened banks, and there's potential for further stream bed and bank instability. Shifting gears to focus on urban parks and athletic fields. In 2009, Tysons had approximately 90 acres of publicly owned or accessible park space. As of June 2023, Tysons has added approximately 35.6 acres, shown in blue on this map, of park spaces that are open to the public. And the approved entitlements since 2010 provide a commitment to add 107 acres, shown here in red, of publicly owned or publicly accessible park space. Generally, applications are meeting their generated park needs, and those spaces will be built in phases with the redevelopment. The comprehensive plan calls for 20 new athletic fields to be built to support the development. As of June 2023, 3 of those fields have been built, 9 have been proffered, and 1 is expected with a pending application. The implementation of athletic fields is ahead of the pace of redevelopment. Shifting again to affordable housing, a critical aspect of the Tysons plan is the provision of housing choices to encourage a population of varied incomes. The plan encourages all Tysons projects with a residential component to provide a percentage of their units as affordable and/or workforce dwelling units. All approved PTC rezoning applications are committed to provide affordable/workforce units based on the total number of approved units to date. As many as 5,000 workforce housing units could be developed in Tysons. New non-residential development in Tysons is also expected to expand housing choices by providing a cash contribution to the Tysons Housing Trust Fund or an equivalent contribution. Most developers are utilizing the option to provide either a one-time contribution of $3 per square foot of non-residential development or an annual payment of 25 cents per square foot of non-residential development for a term of 16 years. Since the Housing Trust Fund was established, contributions total $10,327,000 or approximately $235. In 2022, $8.9 million of the Tysons Housing Trust Fund was allocated to the construction of affordable housing at the Dominion Square West development, which will deliver a total of 516 affordable units within 2 buildings. An additional $1.2 million was allocated to the Somos development, which will facilitate the delivery of at least 300 affordable units. Because of these allocations, the Tysons Housing Trust Fund has a balance of $210,000 as of June 1st, 2023. We wanted to touch on a few of the major projects in process, which are supporting the growth of Tysons community, most of which are currently happening in Tysons West. First being the Exchange. Development of a community center is underway at the base of the Dominion Square West affordable housing project. As of June 2023, this is a site plan under review. As you might have noticed if you've been near the site now, it is actively under construction. In addition, a new pump station at Tysons West will replace an older obsolete facility in the vicinity. This new upgraded facility is necessary to accommodate the projected development levels. A 2232 was approved in late October 2023, and additional sanitary sewer line upgrades are planned related to the pump station improvements. And these line improvements will impact Route 7, Tyco Road, and the Old Courthouse area. We also wanted to note that Dominion has authorization to pursue undergrounding the transmission line in Tysons West, which runs from the Tyco substation to a new substation, Spring Hill, located between Tysons Square East and Sunburst application along Vesper Trail. And as of June 2023, that site plan was under review. Finally, we wanted to focus a little bit more on the 2 districts that are partially within the Hunter Mill district. As you know, the edge follows along Leesburg Pike Route 7 and Chain Bridge Road. So starting with Tysons West, it's been one of the most active districts with almost a dozen applications for development already and 2 buildings implemented to date. There were 2 pending amendments as of June 2023. Both proposed changing the use mix to as residential. One being Tysons West Promenade, which proposed changing the existing hotel to being a residential building. The other being Spring Hill Station E, which proposed swapping out a proposed office building for a proposed residential tower. Since then, both have been approved, but these development totals have not been updated to reflect that yet. And both of the, or despite that, there's also 2 applications that are currently under review and remain under review today. The Evolution and Piazza at Tysons. Next, focusing on Tysons Central 7, which surrounds the Greensboro Metro Station. All of the redevelopment to date has been focused on the northern side of Leesburg Pike. There have been 9 buildings implemented, with 7 of those being at Borough and 2 in Tysons Central so far within the district. And there is a pending amendment under review for the borough, which focuses on buildings B1 and B2, which proposes adding an option for additional office uses. And that is not noted in the sums here, since it's an amendment. Lastly, we want to kind of give you guys a summary and looking ahead, since we are in the process of doing our annual updates. So Tysons redevelopment is occurring in line with the transit-oriented development principles outlined in the plan, with growth concentrated near the metro stations. It continues to be in line with the planned growth projections, and there's additional capacity for growth. In terms of what we know and planning assumptions from pipeline data at this time, there is no cause for concern, and we are still in COVID recovery. Growth is occurring. Pipeline data suggests that the pace may stabilize, particularly in the next year, due to financing and other factors. But this is why we monitor for the long term rather than looking only at short-term conditions. So there are a number of projects currently in process to support the growth for Tysons, help build out the community fabric, and provide services to the Tysons community. Ongoing coordination with the Tysons Community Alliance for projects such as improvements at Route 7 and 123, implementation of the community circuit, and other projects that help, other projects that help support the growing Tysons community. Staff is going to continue to monitor plan implementations and trends in the data. Ultimately, our goal is to use this information not just to see how Tysons is doing, but to refine goals and pivot implementation efforts as we move forward to ensure Tysons' ultimate success in the county, region, and country. And with that, I say thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you guys might have. Please note that the Tysons tracker, all of our previous annual reports, and more Tysons information is available on our website. I've also included a direct link to the Tysons tracker, and you can reach us and DPD at the email address listed above.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just launch into the Q&A period. Why don't we start with Jay? Jay Monroe. Jay, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I guess first on slide 6, I think it was, you talked about different types of facilities, and one of them was civic. And I was just wondering, what all do you include in that? Is that just another word for public facilities, or what is that? It might have been slide 5. I kind of lost track at some point.
On slide 4, I talked about the commitment for 15 new major public facilities.
No,
So
this was like a chart, and
I think it's the existing land use.
Yes.
The sliver
okay.
for civic. So that is largely public facility square footage. We get that data from our Department of Tax Administration. So it's largely based off of how the land is being taxed, but most of that is public facility use.
Okay. And so I guess my big question though is, maybe I'm not exactly sure how Fairfax works, but when you establish a plan for the county, you know, like Tysons Corner or something else, how does that go into providing public facilities? Like, I know Dominion has stepped in and built this power substation, but is it just up to individual organizations across the county to decide, where they need water, or is that within, your office, or, and I don't just mean water and power, I mean literally everything that the county provides.
Sure. So when the Tysons plan was developed, as someone mentioned, Supervisor Alcorn was on the task force that was part of that plan development. There was an extensive amount of outreach that looked at, because we were adding, the plan does call to balance out the jobs to housing ratio by adding residential use. There's obviously a need for public facilities that come with that residential use, and just trying to balance out the land use mix within Tyson. So there was extensive outreach done to various county agencies and staff involved in public facility planning. So everything from police, fire and rescue, our Department of Public Works, looking at, water and sewer capacity, looking at what are the needs, reaching out to Dominion and determining, based on projected growth, what are the levels, new substations needed, or other types of infrastructure needs in order to support that growth. So that's all part of the work that goes into the long range plan development.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I will add too that we do evaluate that on an annual basis. So we check in with all of our partner agencies that are responsible for those different services, as well as the providers, and see kind of where they are. How are we doing in terms of the growth projections? Are they? And sometimes we do have updated needs to projected when the facility might be needed. In some cases, it might be earlier than anticipated, and most of the cases are finding it's needed a little bit later, just based on the growth levels. But we do that check-in annually with all of our county agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm good, Steve.
Okay, thanks. Anne Marie?
Hi, thanks. So thank you for this presentation and the Tysons tracker. I love the maps. So thank you so much for maintaining that kind of GIS tool. There's a lot of data in there. The question I've had every time one of these new mixed use residentials comes up, basically in Tysons West, and we've been seeing a bunch of them over the last, I'd say, 2 years. They've visited us for various meetings. And especially the affordable and workforce housing. So for instance, APA's Dominion Square West is entirely affordable. I think you said 518-ish, 16-ish units. I recall during their presentation, they said that at least 120 of them will be 3-bedroom units. And they said they are specifically targeting to draw families there. So that would mean children. And yet then we kind of probe further and we ask them, well, what is your projected school enrollment? And they come up with these numbers that just, they don't jive. I asked this question of the team that's redeveloping the Sheraton, and they said that their projection shows 10 children coming out of several hundred units. And yes, they're going to be small units. And then Dominion Square West, the number of children just didn't make sense when you say that at least 100 of the units will be 3 bedrooms. So I think they said there might be 75 children. I mean, even taking that as correct, some large quantity of those will be K through 6, so elementary, middle, and then high school. And they all zone to existing schools outside of Tysons, basically in Vienna, not in the town of Vienna, but they all zone to this very same, very old, unrenovated, not in the CIP elementary school. And so this has kind of just been the burr in my saddle, is we're not getting good information about where these children are supposed to show up to school when the building comes online. And like, I think they told last date we heard for Dominion Square West was March of 2026. So like it comes online, they get full occupancy somewhere over the next 6 months. So September 2026, all these kids are showing up at a new school. Does the school have any idea this is going to happen? So And I realize there is a elementary school, Westgate, which is over off of McGarity Road. I guess in Tyson, is that East? Tysons East, I suppose. But what is the plan for accommodating these children? So that's the question.
So frankly, that's a question. It's a good question. I think it would most be appropriately answered by Fairfax County Public School staff, since they are the ones that are responsible for running the formulas and doing the quantification and looking at the generation of students per unit. So I'm not totally sure that we can answer your question besides directing you to what's in the tracker and kind of what that shows in terms of how they're looking at, projected growth and how they're going to accommodate that growth.
But every time we've asked this question to the developers, and we even asked, I remember asking the Dominion Square West folks if they could reach out actually to Westbriar Elementary School's leadership. And they said, well, no, we're just going to rely on the numbers that come out of the board, the school board. And it's just, it's operating in a fiction here, and everybody just sort of wink, wink, nod, nod, and 500 units of affordable housing, and they're telling us it will yield fewer than 75 children. It doesn't pass the sniff test. And so we keep deferring to these statistics until the folks at Westbriar Elementary School wonder, why is my kid's classroom have 38 kids or something like that on the first day? Is it incumbent on us to go to the board? Is it and say, I don't even know how to handle this question.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. Again, Chris Caperton. I think I'm going to echo what Susie said, and this is the school's purview to look at capacities at all of the schools and projections for all of the schools, including, those that are outside of the Tyson service area. But, we get those updates from Fairfax County Public Schools every year, and we pulled the curtain back a little bit on, some of their, how they use metrics and data and projections to try to figure out, where the projections for the coming school years lie. It's very involved, and I'm sure that there are people that could explain it to you. We have relied on it for 13, 14 years now for Tyson's tracker, and nobody's ever said, wow, you got that totally wrong. And you've seen how the population has increased in Tyson. So we have some trust in the numbers because of the track record. I think just you also have to understand, and I don't fully understand how the numbers can look so low for so many units, but we certainly have asked for 3-bedroom units. It's so lacking in the affordable housing, and Carter would back that up, I believe. We always get smaller units. So to have some families is a good thing, but I would guess that the predominant units are still going to be 1-bedroom or, maybe 2-bedroom. And these are often couples that just need an extra space. It isn't necessarily indicative of a family if they're 2 bedrooms. But even those ratios are constantly being looked at, not only by the county and our tax people, but COG, tries to understand what the per person unit, and per person by square footage is for units. So I would please understand, and I appreciate the question. We understand that there's a concern that suddenly there's going to be this big influx, but development and the filling out of these buildings is also a slow process. It's not like one day, in July, there's nobody there, and the 1st of September, there's, a capacity. And, that will take time. And I think the schools will continue to monitor that, as, populations increase and residential development increases in Tysons. But again, the plan is just reflecting what we get from, and back to Jay's question, all these other service providers, police, fire, they all have their own metrics for, when we're at near capacity or need to expand, water lines, sewer lines. So everybody has their own formulas. And this plan is just trying to roll that up and reflect that and not necessarily make judgments on, are these the best metrics or shouldn't they be doing it this way? We as planners pretty much have to take this data at its face value. I hope that helps.
I mean, it does. It's just simply that for children in education, it's sort of the externality problem is they get shipped out of the immediate service area whereas, the sewer has to be provided locally. The police can drive there to provide coverage. Fire, there is a new fire station. So, I mean, those services can move to the need. Whereas for the children, it's sort of, they just take them out of the service area and we'll just deal with them somewhere else that is probably has no idea this is coming. And it's just so, the adjustments are so, they take so long to come online. I mean, I looked in the most recent capital budget for the school. There's no plan to increase capacity at any of the area Tyson schools to accommodate this. So it's sort of just cross our fingers and hope that we're right. And I realize you're saying many, many units have come online in the last 14-ish years, but I think those have specifically and intentionally avoided being of a size that would accommodate children. So, I mean, this is sort of just cross our fingers and hope that they'll be able to just sort of sift into the capacities. Nobody seems to have a good answer, and everybody seems to say just trust the schools. They know what they're doing, and I have my doubts. And just because the people who will be impacted don't know this is coming. So that's where something like, the supervisors will experience the blowback.
Yeah, to pick up on what Anne Marie said, I live in the neighborhood which supports West Briar Elementary, and one of our homeowners association members that I had talked to went and talked to the principal at West Briar, which currently is at capacity now, and she was sort of totally flabbergasted that there are going to be 3 residential projects that have been approved, which are all going to funnel into West Briar, including the affordable housing project that Anne Marie mentioned. So I totally second what she was saying is that the kids are usually, and the principals are usually the last ones to find out with this, especially with the emphasis of trying to bring more residential to Tysons. Right now, the residential that's being served by West Briar, most of them, aside from the ones that come by school buses, most of them, though, are driven, which of course impacts the neighborhood in terms of parking congestion. Supervisor Alcorn is aware of that and is trying to deal with it, but I think that's kind of a short-term solution that might come up, but the long-term is we only have a few elementary schools in the Tysons area that we can draw on, and they're all pretty much running at capacity right now.
Okay. Anne Marie, do you have anything more?
No, I mean, often the solution becomes redistricting, and that is fraught. So if that does need to come to pass, that groundwork has to, start being laid years ahead of time.
Okay.
Again, that's a political question.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to circle back to both Paul and Ross, so I think are in the close, reside in the nearest proximity to Tysons. But I want to, before I go to them, Joe, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, 2 questions. One high level. where are these people coming from to fill up these apartment buildings? I live in Reston Town Center, and I see so many apartment buildings, office buildings, hotels being built outside my apartment building. And then two, I know there's a lot of government contractors in Northern Virginia, but where are the companies coming to fill these things? DC has a vacancy rate of at least 20%. I don't think Northern Virginia is that bad, but obviously these developers feel like they can fill these apartments and office buildings.
We don't keep data on, I'm sure that the individual property owners and managers do keep metrics such as that. We as a county don't keep metrics as to where people are coming from. I can tell you just kind of more generally, there is a strong desire for living within the TOD area. So having access to Metro, being able to not need a car to get around. So the lifestyle is definitely becoming more desirable across the county, which is why a lot of the growth is focused around the Metro stations on the Silver Line. But in terms of metrics as to where people are coming from, I can't speak to that.
Thank you.
Joe, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Okay, let's go to Paul. Back to Paul, actually. Paul?
Okay, one thing that I wanted to sort of address is the idea. I'm a former planner, and I worked on a project years ago, and many projects in terms of making Tysons not only livable, but also walkable. And I think most of what we've gotten so far has been maybe a smidgen of walkable or bikeable, but mostly it's still, vehicle oriented, going back to when Tysons Mall came out in '68. And so what is the goal? I know we have a couple of projects that have come online that have sort of a walkable area. My wife and I walked, several months ago, from our house to the borough, which is on average maybe a mile and a half, mile and a quarter. And we were literally amazed at how we're taking our life in our hands, trying to navigate across Route 7 to get to the other side of Tysons up to the borough. So my question is that how serious is the plan for making it walkable, or to excuse the pun, has the train left the station?
So I think that is a major component and remains a major component of the work that we do every day in our review of Tysons applications and looking at how the development is building out. There's also, for those who aren't familiar, there's an organization called the Tysons Community Alliance. It's a relatively new organization, about a year and a half into existence. And so this organization replaced the former Tysons Partnership. And so the TCA is really a community-based organization that is looking to help tackle a lot of these issues with urbanizing, particularly in the realm of mobility and transportation. And so they just unrolled a, pun intended, walk, bike, roll campaign, which they received money from the State Department of Transportation in order to bring more awareness to the walkability of Tysons. And there's 4 routes around each metro station. So there are definitely, besides our county infrastructure projects and things of that nature, the crossings over the Beltway were, that's a huge improvement to creating better connectivity. But we do know that we have a long ways to go. And so we're also looking at implementation of plan vision items like the Tysons Community Circuit, which is a recreational trail loop that's envisioned to go connect all across Tysons. It's about 4.75 miles in its ultimate configuration. And we have a few segments that are going in right now at the boroughs of, I guess you might call it their phase 2. So on the other side of West Park, that's going in with the Silverstone project and the West Park Plaza, West Park Corporate Center application. So if you go over there today, if you've been over there, you can see that that's in place. So that's the foundation of what we're looking to work on further implementation of in order to create that connectivity. And so that's another project that my group, in coordination with the Tysons Community Alliance and our other partners within the county, are looking to further that, because we see that as a benefit for everyone, for residents, for visitors, for mobility, for economic development, for placemaking, all of those things. It really helps tie all of those elements of plan implementation together quite nicely. And so we are making steps, but yes, there are missing links and things like that. And, you know, we're working to identify those and figure out how we can get those, can create those connections now versus waiting, over time for those to be built, and understanding that sometimes it's not just about having the infrastructure, it's about creating good infrastructure and pleasant infrastructure that makes it more walkable and people want to use it, rather than having like a curb abutted sidewalk, which is scary. We like to have landscaping and street trees and that kind of quality of place that makes it safe and comfortable and encourages people to use that pedestrian infrastructure. But yes, it's a great point, and we're very, very much aware of that, and it's part of our daily work.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and I might just add, I don't know if any of you saw it back on, I'm looking at it now, June 25th, that in Greater Washington, the Greater Washington website, there's an opinion piece on walkability in Tysons. And let's see, I read this quite a while back now, but the headline is, since the 90s, planners have envisioned a walkable Tysons. Is it working? And basically the upshot is it's very much a work in progress. Anyway, okay, well, let's go to Ross Shearer. Ross.
Hi, I was going to talk a little bit about the walkability too, but one of the reasons that we asked for this meeting is trying to understand our frustration and trying to understand, how these proposals fit into the larger plan, their impact on schools, on roads, on traffic. And it seems like all the developers want to maximize their footprint and build to the minimum lead that they can. And the Tysons development plan, I participated in some of those groups, and I think it was as far back as 2006. And there was a lot of interest in energy efficiency and building green. And then the plan came out, and energy efficiency took a back seat. And then when we look at the architectural plans that they give us to look at, we see that the sidewalks are the minimum that's required by the county. And a lot's changed since 2010. People have electric scooters and bikes and these little boards that operate on one wheel, and they're getting around very cheaply on those. And it seems like the plan needs to be revised to take those into account. And then I've asked on several occasions about electric charging, and well, we've met the required minimum that the county has. Well, that's now out of date as well. The representatives for the replacement of the Sheraton building twice referred me to the Electrify America station, which I use, by the way, over at Walmart, and it's already oversubscribed, and everybody knows Electrify America is unreliable. So I guess the sense is how that the plan, the people that make the decisions about how this is organized need to think, should we be updating this to take into account what's happened in the last 15 years since the last time it was looked at? or electric transit, these compact ways of people getting around, climate change, and the buildings with additional natural gas connections when we should be getting away from fossil fuels. So I think that was part of it, trying to understand how how the plan so far is meeting its ultimate goal of sustainable development. And the business about the school is scary. That school, my kids went to that school. That school's always been over enrolled, and with the way the school board deals with it when it gets too large for the structure. And by the way, someone remarked that it's old and it's quite run down. I think it's okay to put temporary buildings up with noisy air conditioners and heat pumps, and the children hate it, and the teachers hate it even more than the children. So I think this needs to be looked at again, in light of what's new and different from what wasn't the case in 2006 and 7 and 8 when this plan was conceived. And that was why we wanted to meet with you and kind of get your thoughts about that. At least that was my idea. John was the one who suggested this, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time and presentation, the effort to put it together for us. And I guess that's all I have to say at this point.
Any response from county staff?
Well, I think there's a number of things that you mentioned that are, I would put them more under the county-wide policy lens. And in terms of the, looking at EV charging and what's required. We also do track green building commitments for Tysons, and that's actually tracked on a county-wide basis. So we do know how those buildings are performing and how many we have where they're located. In terms of how the plan is doing, as Beth summarized, it's been our opinion as staff and and talking with some of our other elected and appointed officials that the plan is working as intended. Are there potential areas that could use a closer lens? Yes, and that's why we do the monitoring, is because we don't want to just be making decisions based on what we've seen in the past year, but we really want to be taking that longer term look and really studying the data and seeing what it's telling us about how things are doing, and then using that to help, inform decision making moving forward. So at this point, there are certain elements that I think we're tracking, like we're looking at the urban, the kind of urban parks calculations and having discussions about, is that something then that's part of the policy plan? Is that something that should be considered to be looked at? Are some of our planning assumptions about number of square feet per employee when we're doing projections, or looking at the number of persons per unit from a planning perspective? Do we have enough data now to know we haven't we should looking to make adjustments to those things moving forward? So there definitely have been discussions internally, but I think overall we do feel that the plan is working as intended, and that development is occurring in line with the plan.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm just going to pause for a minute because I think we may have a member of the public that joined us. So what I should have said at the beginning is our normal procedure is when we have an application before us, which we don't have tonight, we have a presentation from the county, which we periodically do have presentations on various issues, plan amendments and the planning process and that sort of thing. But the normally how we do things is we have the applicant make a presentation, then the committee asks questions and makes comments on it. Then we go to Planning Commissioner John Carter, and then if there are any members of the public that have questions or comments, then we do that. And sometimes we change that. We don't always adhere real strictly to that. Sometimes we'll bring members of the public in earlier in the conversation. But anyway, I just have a handful of questions myself, and actually they all have to do with transportation. And I just read recently, actually, I think it was in Fairfax Now today, about the county is going to proceed with a widening of Route 7, kind of southeast of the core area of Tysons, about a mile down to I-66, that will accommodate a future bus rapid transit line. And actually the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission chose not to recommend funding for the project, but the county is going to go ahead with it itself. But anyway, so that just raises a question in my mind. I don't know how far away this BRT facility would be built, but how would it actually, would there be any additional improvements needed through the Tysons core area on Route 7 to accommodate BRT?
That's a great question. And the answer is the BRT would be accommodated within the existing right of way along Route 7. So we worked very closely with our FCDOT staff and our other planning staff to make sure that we could maintain the existing right of way and not need any more because it is already rather quite wide. And from the pedestrian standpoint, we want to keep roads as narrow as possible. So that is, and that was put into the, there was a plan amendment to include the BRT, I think it was last year. And part of it is explicit about, being accommodated within the right of way along Route 7 through Tysons, through the urban center.
Okay, thanks. And the other
Sure.
question has to do with Boone Boulevard, which will be kind of run parallel to Route 7 to the west and or southwest. The southwest side is 100 Mills, within 100 Mill from 123 up to the toll road. And so I know that's largely going to be built through proffers, correct? And maybe parts of it are actually underway. I can't recall now. But at any rate, there's been this question as to whether, there would be a direct link to the toll road. And that was actually, I think, in a plan somewhere, possibly the county's transportation plan. Although there's, it seems like that there's pretty much a consensus that it's never going to happen, which I think personally is a good thing. But what is the latest on that?
So the latest on that is that there are parts of Boone Boulevard that we do have developer commitments for. And that section will come in subsequent to redevelopment. And we are looking at that alignment. We did a lot of studying of that alignment to make sure that was in the right place. It was as narrow as possible, having the least amount of impact. In terms of the ramp, I believe that the amendment that was approved for Tysons West at the Sheridan site is still looking to accommodate a ramp. The timing of that is very unknown. And I think it's still up for debate if or when that would be needed, but it is accommodated in the development plan. So yeah, I think that there's, it's a tricky connection. I think FCDOT would say that they probably need it at some point, but frankly, I don't know when the numbers would trigger that need, based on what we've seen.
Yeah, the concern that this committee had, and this goes back quite a ways now, 5-7 years maybe, when we last discussed this, is the width of Boone Boulevard. That there were parts of it that were, or maybe the entire thing was envisioned to be a 4-lane facility, and there were various opinions on, should it be built at all, or should it just be a 2-lane facility? And of course, the issue was encroaching on parkland to the west,
right,
and that sort of thing. And I don't know if there have been any, if that's been revisited at all more recently.
Not to my knowledge, it has not been. But I know a lot of work, I was on part of the original team probably back in 2013 at this point, that was looking at that cross section and the alignment and trying to make sure that it was, as at least impactful as possible on the parkland, on the environmental, minimizing environmental impacts and being as narrow as possible, but still functional. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been any further discussion on that. But we can
Okay.
follow up with FCDOT and get back to you on that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, John, do you have any, John Carter, do you have any comments or questions?
I have a couple. I don't need to. I don't have any specific comments, but you have the A team here working on this from a staff perspective. Susie and Chris and the other person. I'm sorry, I don't know you well. The third person who did most of the presentation earlier, but this is a very good team that's experienced and keeping up with these issues. That whole tracking is a mega effort to keep that going. I've got my little list from the group. I think the schools and walkability are the two that we probably need to work on. We all need to work a bit on those. I wonder how many schools are actually projected for Tysons, and we have no land, and that's a concern. That might, well, that definitely deserves a follow up to answer Anne Marie and others. It's not just the schools in Vienna; it's the schools in McLean and Marshall High School and all of those. I think we could follow up. The schools does do a projection, and I don't know what it is for Tysons. So, the walkability, that's ongoing. We've had 2 or 3 presentations at the planning commission from people from the borough concerned about walkability, although that's one of the newer and better projects. In terms of the projects, Tysons West, which you saw recently, has gone away. So they're behind schedule. I think we have another big project coming, although it's down the ways away, at Coons, at the intersection of 123 and Route 7. And no, it's not a casino. Right? But I think the schools and the walkability, and I know the staff is focused on this, and there's probably some creative things that we'll come up with. But and then I have Boone Boulevard, which is an interesting one. We do need to work on that. You see those all, and the ones that have been to your group, we have on one end of it, it's 2-lane private road. On the other end, it's a ramp to the toll road, which I don't think federal government's going to approve that ever. And it's a 2-way ramp, by the way, in some portions. And then the middle is a 7-lane highway in front of APA. So yeah, I think some more work on that would be useful. I know Walter Alcorn has been working on the park there, and it's a stream valley that has a long name that I can never remember, but it's right behind Tysons West and that whole area. Simple things that Walter's been working on, trails and better connections to the Vesper Trail. So there are some things like that coming. So anyway, I don't want to leave it with, oh, this is a rosy picture, we got it all figured out. I think the schools and the walkability are the primary ones that all of us could work on. The thought is that developers would get together and figure that out, not just the schools, but the libraries and soccer fields and those things. I don't think that's happened yet. Maybe that's what Tysons, this new Tysons community organization would help out with. But I didn't want to leave Anne Marie hanging there with no hope. But so I don't know.
that's sort of my extraneous comments. But you do have people working on this. People are focused on this. They do report to the Board of Supervisors. So, and you have people that they're experienced and know what they're doing. So, might not have all the answers that you want, but so that's about all I can offer.
Okay, thanks, John. And the person that I thought may have been a member of the public has dropped off. So I guess we're pretty much at the end of this session. If there are any other questions or
I guess one more thing, Steve, for me, I guess, you know, we've approved, or even before my time, several projects in the 100 mil portion of Tysons, of which I think APA is the only one. Well, there's a small temporary retail project along 7. That's the only one of all of those, but there's probably almost all of the land is spoken for. So that's part of why there isn't more action on the schools. Those things haven't gone forward. I suspect an awful lot of them are coming back because they all had a large portion of office, and unless they just want to continue to sit there. But if any of those want to go forward, I suspect they'll be coming back, and this group will be busy.
Yeah. And actually, John, you were a member of this committee when some of those came through.
I was. That's right.
So, anyway, okay. Well, anyway, I want to thank the Fairfax County staff for joining us tonight, and Mark Goldberg Foss for arranging this, along with John Carter. What I should have said at the beginning, and just the one thing I forgot to mention, was that Mark of course, does represent Supervisor Alcorn's office. He handles the planning and zoning and portfolio. Well, actually, we do have a hand up now. The last name is Ramicus. I can't see what the first name is. Jessica, do you want to go ahead and
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself?
Yes, I'm sorry I can't have my camera on this evening, but I've really appreciated the discussion. I'm Jessica Ramicus. I'm here from the Vienna Town Council, and really appreciate the points about balancing the goals for having diverse housing options, but also if those new housing opportunities have families in them, then where are those families going to be best served in terms of schools and parks and other, I think, public spaces that, you know, could come to the town of Vienna. And of course, just want to be sure that there are continuous communications on what the plans are, and to be sure that with the county that there's a plan. So I really appreciated that discussion. I also heard the mention of the casino, and of course the casino proposal. And I know one thing that we and others, we being the town council in Vienna unanimously opposes having a casino in Tysons. I know there's a lot of effort to gather, you know, feedback, and we were very active this past year, and know that the bill could come back again next year. I just wasn't sure if there's anything else that would be helpful to talk about. Clearly, that's not in plans that were talked about tonight. But are there any perspectives on that would be helpful to cover while we're talking about the overall vision for Tysons, which I know one of the things we've said is a casino is not in the plan for Tysons. It hasn't been contemplated as part of, you know, thoughtful development strategy for Tysons. But I thought it would be helpful to raise in case there was anything that would be helpful to talk about related to that tonight.
This is Chris Caperton. I don't know if Susie has any input on that. I know that as these bills, as we were reviewing bills during the year that had a casino element, and it got in the papers and everything, the Department of Planning and Development, and specifically our zoning group, you know, looked into terminology and definitions, and it began a whole sort of research project into, what is a casino? Is it an entertainment use? Is it a hotel? Is it all of the above with a buffet? I mean, it's just very hard to, in dealing with, no specifics. Of course, everything was just very hypothetical. I mean, I think that kind of use would ultimately be a board of supervisors, type of decision. And certainly the Tysons plan would never envision, that type of use. And we traditionally don't see that type of use in Fairfax County. So I was around when the plan was being put together, but I can't imagine that type of use would ever be envisioned, at least at that time. But times change, and our plan, as Susie alluded to earlier, talking about environment and energy, it is based on policy that the Board of Supervisors have adopted for what the land use in our county is going to look like and how the services are going to be provided. So that's kind of a non-answer, Jessica. We don't. We plan in reaction to board, decisions within the context of the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. And there's nothing in the plan or the zoning ordinance that talks about casinos at this point.
And I would just add that obviously any board decision, I know I've heard Chairman McKay say this as well, would involve a large amount of public engagement and feedback process in order to make any decision related to a casino in the county.
I
Yes.
can't imagine that it wouldn't, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those points. It's just, we have every reason to expect that this will come up again in the next session. So being prepared for that, it seems more than appropriate. I know one point that the state senator who has been advocating for this, one point he is making is about the vacancy rate of office space in Tysons. And I know, again, that was touched on a little bit today, but could you go over that again, just with some, like what the current vacancy rate is in the office space in particular, and how that compares regionally, or is that something we could follow up about if not tonight?
Yeah, Jessica, we do have those numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head, but we can certainly get those to you. Tysons as a whole is actually doing a lot better than other parts of the region.
Thank you. That's what we had heard. So when we heard the senator, make those comments, we had thought we had heard that what you just said, that Tysons was faring better than other areas that have, a lot of office presence. So yeah, it would be great if we could have that information. Thank you very much.
Sure, we can get that from our our Economic Development Authority. They maintain that data. We can get that from them.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, one last thing we do at the end of committee meetings is discuss what's coming down the pike, for the next couple months, especially if we'll need to meet next month or not. So those of you that don't have an interest in hearing about that, you're welcome to sign off. John, do you foresee, so you mentioned the Coons site, which that was one of the only site-specific plan amendments in Hunter Mill District, correct? Or was there another one or two?
I believe that's it, but that's
Yeah.
gone away. I don't think that's going to be a plan amendment.
Oh, okay. But anyway, something.
I think in the next month, I don't know that there's a project coming.
Okay.
It's August anyway, so just as well.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Tysons West will be back at some point.
Okay.
It's not going to be in the next month or two, I suspect. The Coons project is pretty far down the road. Another thing that is coming is the policy plan is being looked at now. And I think that's a ways. It wouldn't be in the next month or two, I don't think, but everybody's working pretty hard on that policy plan,
Right.
all the elements, and there's quite a lot of work to do there. So that's kind of what's coming up for Hunter Mill.
Okay, well, thanks, John.
At any time, I think those projects that have been approved that I was talking about that are mostly office, I would think at any time those could come in and switch to more residential. So it is an interesting place, the Hunter Mill portion of it. So it's good to keep your eye on it.
Yeah.
So that's what I know in terms of coming forward. Now I could be wrong tomorrow, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, thanks, John. And so we'll just have to stay tuned. Mark will keep us informed. So it doesn't look like we'll have a meeting next month. September is very much up in the air right now. So,
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And goodbye till next time.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.